right. There we go. What's good, people? Hope everybody is doing well out there. Yeah. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. So I hope everybody is well. Shout out to those that came through early. Got Adric in here. What's up? Got Nub in here. DJ Time, what's going on? Shout out to Inner Light Radio. We are broadcasting today on innerlightradio.com, Facebook, LinkedIn, of course, YouTube and Twitch. So, support Inner Light Radio, Black-owned online radio. Shout out to Builders Table with the early donation. So let's go. People are coming at me with vote for Kamala because we hate Trump type energy. I say vote your interests. I will not vote for Kamala. Gold Professor, what's going on, man? Hear you. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel so we can continue to bring you independent Black male thought. We can actually have conversations that are not designed around appeasing other people's feelings, but actually speak directly to our interests. And surprisingly, there are not a lot of spaces where men can do that. So let's support the ones that we do have. And we can see that mainstream, even YouTube itself, seems to be eliminating as many of those spaces as possible. So that's going to require your support because a lot of us that are trying to do this work are still being shadow banned. I can tell you, since the last show I've done, which has been a little minute, I am still 41 subscribers shy of 40,000. So I'm definitely shadow banned. So make sure if you haven't subscribed and you're here, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button. Y'all know the deal. And you can support the channel. Variety of ways you can see right there on the screen. You can do so with Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, or Patreon. You can become a member of the channel. Shout out to Greg on the Cash App. Appreciate that. You can become a member of the channel right here on YouTube by hitting the join button. Becoming a member that way. Or you can go to Patreon and become a channel patron where you can support the Onyx Report right here on YouTube and or the Institute for Black Male Studies. So please look into those. And speaking of which, you just saw the merchandise commercial for the Institute for Black Male Studies. My son reached out to me about a week ago. He's in school, and he said, Dad, I saw some people walking around with your merch on. So that was kind of cool. I said, well, did you actually talk to him? He said, no, I was late. I said, so now you care about punctuality. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, shout out to KMG Kill Switch. Let's see. Inspired Truth, what's going on? 6-month member. Appreciate that. Let's see, we got Depth, Nas. Shout out to Barry Little, dropping information on the channel as usual. Much appreciated for all your work, Barry. Thank you for that. What's up, John? What else we got in here? We got Indigo in the house, Jaguar Archery. What's going on? Let's see, Ahmed, what's happening? Ron, sports droppings. Oh, hopefully sports droppings. I hope you guys find it interesting. Kennard, Donnie Mac, what's up? Omari, what's good? Paul, Cynical Optimist. We got Molly in the house. Shout out to Barry for the donation. So no support for our agenda equals no vote from us. The U.S., from us, the 18-point Black male political agenda. Exactly. Music Man, what's up? Mosley, Kiel, AB, what's going on, AB? LXST, CJ Jackson, what's happening? Layman's Journal in the house, what's good? Shout out to Layman's Journal. If you're not supporting the Layman's Journal channel, you are missing out. He just dropped his epic video reviewing a marriage story. You should go to his channel and check it out. You should also join his Patreon so you can see his vision void of copyright reservations. So go ahead and check out Layman's Journal on Patreon and definitely on YouTube. Membership, all you gotta do is join the channel. You'll see him drop his stuff. So he's good. And he's doing the work. Magnificent, what's going on? Vince, Adric, what's happening? Chocolate Delegate. Blood Crow, what's up? Russell, Regular. Ghetto User in the house, what's going on? Got Jimmy in here. Let's see, Shepherd, what's happening? Danette. Officer Charles, what's going on, man? Got Electrician 480. Appreciate that long-term membership. Thank you for that. For the jam, what's up, Renzo? Dead Set in the house. What's up, Dead Set? Ken Lee, Mike, DJ B-Side, what's going on? And shout out to Sincere for the donation. Peace and good health, Doc. Appreciate that. AKs and curtains, what's going on? So let's get into a few of these things I think are important, before we jump in here. So first and foremost, I wanted to drop this first because the brother's on a clock. I think it's important we get the word out about him. So here you go. This is innocenceproject.org, and this is Marcellus Williams. He is scheduled for execution in 6 days, 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 24 seconds, as you can see. You got the timer going on. He's currently on death row. He has served 24 hours in the state of Missouri. He's convicted of first-degree murder, robbery, burglary. Of course, the sentence is death. Incident date is August 11th, 1998. Conviction date, June 15th, 2001. He did not plead guilty. Contributing causes of conviction: informants, death penalty case, yes. Race of victim, Caucasian. Status active. As you can see here, it says Marcellus Williams is scheduled for execution in Missouri on September 24th, even though there's no reliable evidence proving that he committed the crime for which he was sentenced to death. The state destroyed or corrupted the evidence that could conclusively prove his innocence, and the available DNA and other forensic crime scene evidence does not match him. There's far too much uncertainty in this case to allow Mr. Williams to be executed, particularly when the victim's family believes life without parole is an appropriate sentence. It is not too late for Governor Mike Parson to ensure that Missouri does not take innocent man's life. The governor should exercise his authority to grant clemency and commute Mr. Williams' sentence to life without parole, or at minimum, stay the execution to allow the resolution of further appeals. Right? Let's see any bigger. All right. With the weight of this new evidence, and the unreliability of the witnesses who testified against Mr. Williams, his conviction must be reevaluated to ensure that justice is truly served. Dedicated professionals from the Innocence Project, Midwest Innocence Project, and Brian Cave, along with attorneys Larry Comp, the federal public defender, Western District of Missouri, and Kent Gibson, make up the team that continues the fight to stop his September 24th execution. They hope that justice will eventually prevail by way of an exoneration. So I just wanted to get this out because he doesn't have much time. And I thought I would put it on your mind to observe and think about. So hopefully you will join the fight to allow the brother's situation to be at least further analyzed and have him have more time to be exonerated, especially if the truth is available, if information is available that proves he wasn't the one to commit the act. So I wanted to get that on the table first due to the time. And you can see the ticking clock right there. Right, so this is what Marcellus Williams is dealing with. So hopefully that is something that we can call attention to. Because for too many of us, the clock is definitely ticking. Right? So that was first and foremost. And I wish the brother well. And to his family as well. Right? Next up, I thought this was pretty interesting. I thought it was something we should be aware of. This is iwf.org.uk. And its title reads, Teenage Boys Targeted as Hotline Sees Heartbreaking Increase in Child Sextortion Reports. Sextortion. Yeah. That's a new one on me. I haven't heard that term before, but this comes out March 18th of this year. And I thought it was something we should be aware of as it relates to teenage boys. It says the IWF and NSPCC say tech platforms must do more to protect children online as confirmed sextortion cases soar. Child sexual extortion, or sextortion, reports have rocketed 8-fold in a year, with boys being deliberately targeted by online criminals. New data published today on March 18th by the Internet Watch Foundation shows in 2023, analysts confirmed 176 reports of sexual extortion that contain child sexual abuse material. This is more than 8 times as many as the previous year when 21 cases of sexual extortion were recorded. Boys are targeted most often in the reports received by the IWF, 91% of cases apparently, with analysts frequently seeing evidence of boys being blackmailed by criminals looking to extort money. 3 in 5, 60% reports involve 16 to 17-year-olds. Typically, once blackmailers gain children's trust and successfully coerce them into sharing explicit images or videos, they quickly turn nasty and reveal their true nature. Offenders either demand money or more sexual imagery in return for not exposing the child's nudes to family or friends or putting them on the open internet. This is what we're looking at. This is what's going on with teenage boys. You see some of the image there. Most of the sexual extortion reports, 93% seen by the IWF, come through the Report Remove service run jointly by the IWF and Childline. First of its kind service empowers children in the UK to have sexual images of themselves removed from the internet and provides support and counseling if requested. If sexual imagery gets out of control on the internet or risk being spread online, children can have it removed and blocked. The IWF can even preemptively block imagery that has not yet been shared online, as long as a child has reported the imagery that is at risk of being shared. Here's a story here. A boy aged 18 who contacted Childline said, "I should have known she wasn't real. Never had any girls interested in me before. I'll admit I was just glad a girl wanted to talk to me." Now, you're finding these cases with not only young men, but even older men, particularly older post-retirement age men who find themselves alone. There have been reports over the years of those men being scammed online, basically, exploiting their loneliness. So it's interesting to see this mirrored at the other side of the age continuum. But anyway, I had doubts about her, but I ignored them. After we exchanged numbers and nudes, she disappeared, and I got bombarded by messages from new accounts demanding money. I've already sent them hundreds of pounds, but they won't leave me alone. How do I stop them asking me for more? Right? Since Report Removed was first piloted in 2019, the IWF has removed 1,395 images and videos reported by young people from the internet. The IWF, which finds and removes child sexual abuse material from the internet, and the NSPCC, which runs Childline, are now calling for platforms to do more to protect children, especially if they intend to introduce end-to-end encryption, a move which has prompted fears that many child protection measures currently in place could be made less effective. So I'm not going to read all of the rest of this, but I will put the link in the chat and, of course, in the description box after the show is over. Because even though this is in the UK, I do believe this is happening here, and young men are finding themselves exploited. Now, I've heard of these kind of situations for years now, but I did not know until seeing this report how vulnerable and targeted young men have been in the midst of all of this. So I think we should be cognizant of that. And if you have, some men in your family that you're looking out for, definitely keep an eye on them, just in case they get hit with something like this. What's up, Uncle Fire? See you in there. Marvin, what's going on? Rashad, what's happening? So yeah, so a few of these things to look out for. And the last one, before we get to the main topic, has to do with something that's also happening in the UK, but to a different population. Right? Here's a clip. It's only a couple minutes, but I thought it was interesting because of how it relates to the Black American community, and I'll explain that in a moment. Here we go.
The Metropolitan Police have sent a warning lesson to you Nigerians to stop reporting your husband. For these people to go to this level, you know that they've had enough. They are tired. Different 5 cases, different reports on daily basis. What is it? What is it? You think because you have the power, you have the rights, as a woman, you live in the Western world. Any little misunderstanding that you had with your husband, you're already calling police. Things that you can settle amicably among yourself, you're already calling police. This
shout out to the Zach Kessa channel, I believe it is, or Casa channel. Anyway, so what you're seeing here, and there's a little bit more I'm going to show, is a clip of an incident that some of you may have heard about online. This is going on in the UK, particularly with Nigerians who newly migrated to the UK. And they're finding that their women are calling the police on a wide variety of issues that many are, considered non-issues as far as the police are concerned. And so you actually had the police asking Nigerian women to stop calling them, to throw their husbands out, so on and so forth. I'm gonna let it ride a little longer, but just in case you weren't getting it from her, that's what this is dealing with. And I'll explain why it's important, to our conversation in a moment. Here it goes.
People said they've had enough. You should stop reporting, stop coming, stop calling them for every little thing that doesn't make sense.
UK police say they don't want to be called for Nigerian issues anymore. And unfortunately, because a lot of Nigerians live in the UK, or fortunately, perhaps, I don't know, there was this man who is a policeman, originally from Nigeria, who had a meeting. He called the women, the Nigerian women based in the UK, come, let's have a meeting. And he spoke in Yoruba, which is a language spoken in Nigeria, one of the main languages. He spoke to them saying, please don't call the police on your husbands anymore. We are tired. We can't handle this. Resolve your issues in your house. Find a solution with your husband.
I think we need to change our orientation. Those of you that feel like, your husband is not important, go back to the root. See that man, even though he's not doing anything, being at home, sometimes you might want to talk to your child, but your child might not want to listen to you. You might want to listen to his dad. If the dad say, stop it, that time I stop it. But maybe as a mother, you're there on your own, you say stop it, you just say, what you say? But when the daddy say stop, he will stop.
Now we understand if you have an issue with your husband and it's critical, you need help. Yeah, for sure, you need to call the police on that guy if he's violent, menacing, or anything like that. But he went out and came back at 2 o'clock in the morning. You call the police on him so they can throw him out. No, we're not about that life. Even British people, white people don't do that to themselves. White women don't call the police on their men like Nigerian women call the police on their men. This person who tries his best, this police officer from Nigeria, originally from Nigeria, tried his best to try to pass a message. I think he was trying to say that you need your husbands in the house, Your husbands are very necessary. Your fathers to your children are very necessary.
Okay, so shout out to Zach Mokasa. I appreciate that that video clip gives a bit of an overview. He's talking directly to the Nigerian community in the UK about this. But I found it interesting because in many ways, one of the things we've been talking about on this channel for years about is the rise of what we call a gynocracy, the Black Gynarchy. And what we argue is that the gynocracy is not a natural forming society in and of itself. For the most part, what we mean when we talk about a gynocracy is the rise of women in positions of power within a cultural or a communal environment, but they are backed by a foreign entity. And this is one of the things we talk about having happened in the Black community. It's something that's really becoming prevalent around this conversation with Kamala, because those who are supporting her most enthusiastically are who we identify as part of the gynocracy. And fundamentally what they're looking to do is seize power. In the Black community, most particularly for the last 50 years, we have witnessed a state-backed coup against Black men, most particularly. And so the reason I'm bringing up this issue in the UK with the Nigerian community is because in many ways we're seeing it mirrored, but not over a 50-year span. We're seeing it mirrored just in the last however few months that this is referring to, right? So overall, these women are apparently calling the police on every incident. If he comes home late, if they have an argument, things that are not necessarily considered police level concerns. But more to the point, what's really happening is they are invoking the state on their behalf to enforce their will on men, right? To exact their authority on their husbands, which, is something that, to my understanding, is very different from how the Nigerian community functions outside of the UK. So what we're seeing is, again, the use of institutions, the use of even policy, right, to enforce their will. This is a power grab. This is what can happen within a community. This is an intra-communal coup, right, trying to reverse the positions. And what I mean by that, what it leads up to is something that Charleston White has talked about. Check this out.
Female cousins, all of my female friends, they took on a position that this is my baby. This is my child. Can't no nigga tell me, and y'all done made this together, but the black woman claims 100% control and domination over this child. And a child is a man's legacy. A child is a man's legacy. So all the black women I heard, they never said this is our child, it's my child. And if they mama says something, they go tell mama, this is my child. I raised my kids, my kid. And if the nigga got something to say, no, nigga, I carried this for 9 months. Bitch, I carried him in my nuts before he got to you. So that's a man's legacy. So the black man is robbed of his legacy through the baby mama. So when I came home, every nigga I saw and knew was not co-parenting responsibly with a black woman.
Okay. That was just a clip. You know, I just ran across that, but I thought it interesting to share because what he's talking about is really what's going on in the UK with Nigerians, but a slightly different area, right? He's talking about parenting, which we've known for the last half century has directly been related to the presence of the family court and the use of the family court against black men to develop or attain an authoritative position in families where women become the sole decision makers, right? Now they'll throw a scenario at you of a woman who was abused, who left her husband, had to take care of her kids, and she was broke and he didn't contribute, and that's why there's a need for child support. And there are those scenarios. I'm not denying that. But there are also different scenarios that people don't want to talk about in the mainstream. Scenarios where the deadbeat dad trope for black men was something that was fabricated and mass produced and sold in popular media, right? To position black men, again, in terms of the public's opinion, as less than, as incapable, right? As completely irrelevant to families and in many ways incapable of loving families. Like these are the prevailing stereotypical ideas that have been going on for black men for over a half century. And so now you have people who are in a position to take advantage of it by exploiting policy to secure their positions in families as prime decision makers and push men out and always accept when it comes to exacting resources, which again is where the family court becomes in, where that becomes useful. Okay? What we're seeing happening in the UK with Nigerian families may be the very beginning of that process. The difference, however, as far as Nigerian men in the UK and black men in America, is they actually can look to our experience to figure out what this is far faster than we were able to. When I talked to my father's and my grandfather's generation of men, when this shit started, they had no idea what was going on. Oh, in hindsight, everything gets clearer. But in the midst of it, they were just dealing with what was right in front of them. They didn't have the luxury to look back and see it as a pattern that developed over generations. Shout out to Compassionate. Shout out to Sabra. See y'all in there. What's up, Chemistry? But the point I'm getting at is they can actually look to other men online who can directly tell them what they are experiencing. And they can actually listen to a community of men across the world who are talking about how to strategize and respond to it. Again, even on my humble, small little channel, I've had men from Australia to China, South Africa to Britain, all across the US reaching out to me to tell me their stories. And what they're doing by comparing notes is finding out that they're all experiencing something very similar. The exploitation and abuse of policy and institutions to exact not just what's presented as a form of revenge whenever a woman's not happy in a marriage, but a dynamic where she's able to secure a position of power and exact resources from men, many of whom got into relationships out of a desire for love and family and found themselves quickly on the business end of a divorce. But now we're looking at it finally be evolving to the political level. And we're starting to see that this coup that's been going on in the black community has pushed its way into this race for the presidency. This is one of the reasons, as somebody said very early on, I think Gold Professor said, he's being accosted with women who are demanding that he vote for Kamala. Why? What exactly has she promised to the black male community or the black community, period, for that matter? Doesn't matter. What the Gynocracy recognizes is even if she hasn't promised them explicit policies that would benefit them, her position in and of itself should lead to some type of advancement for black women, women of color, so on and so forth. Questions about her blackness aren't really relevant as far as they're concerned because it has to do with what they can attain when they get there. And one of the easiest ways to see this is to look at the National Association of Black Journalists. and their treatment of both the debates that took place. One, well, it should be interviews. They ended up being debates, at least as far as the first one. First one with Trump, where Kamala was supposed to attend and apparently didn't. And then the second one with Kamala, which I think just took place the other day. Now, shout out to BGS Ibmore. He just did an extensive video where he looked into and compared both interviews. I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to do tonight is just address the short, small section of it where she apparently finally answered a question directly relevant to Black men. And I thought it important because we haven't heard any direct responses to Black men's concerns. For the most part, Black men's concerns have been ignored, even by Black men. Most of these conversations can't tell you what Black men want, what Black men are looking for, what political interests Black men have separate from what we hear about the Black community in general, or what we hear from Black women about what they expect. Very little of it. The assumption being made is a flat Black assumption. It's the idea that Black men's needs are already subsumed into whatever Black women are talking about. Thus, we don't need to ask them any direct questions. This interview that takes place is very interesting because this time they actually had 3 people interview her, and 2 of them were Black and male. And we can have a conversation about whether or not straight Black men were represented. There's some debate about that, but from what I could tell, no, they weren't. Still, the idea, though, that these 3 Black folk who interview Kamala Harris, 2 of whom were Black men, actually got to engage her and have some back and forth. Very little back and forth. I mean, it was a softball interview, which is what she seems to get a lot of, which I think speaks to how incapable we are of dealing with femininity and women in general. We don't punish women for their crimes to the same extent as men. We don't give them difficult interviews, even as president, even when they're running for president. We don't know how to do that. Right? The idea being that they're strong and independent, and yet at the same time vulnerable and need to be protected. A lot of people have not reconciled how to be stern, how to ask direct questions, how to engage women in a direct fashion. I don't have those problems with men, but with women, seems to be, we haven't figured that out yet. With Kamala, most particularly, because at least they used to ask Hillary some questions that were harder than this. But she gets these softball pitch interviews all the time, which make no sense. But I am going to, just like I said, cover just the portion where she's asked about Black men. And I want us to have a conversation about what's said and how she responds, right? So let me go ahead and pull this up. Like I said, it's a short section of it, but here we go. Now, I think I covered up the video so I don't get hit with copyright, because I've been hit with that a few times, so I'm trying to avoid it. Hopefully this works. So let's see.
Credit.
Madam Vice President, Black men, as you know, are a
Okay, so we're starting to get to the Black men question. Please tell me, put a 1 in the chat if you were able to hear that just then. So I can make sure that this goes through smooth and everybody could hear it. Just give me a 1. Beautiful. Okay. All right, because my computer updated and I couldn't get sound on this thing for a couple hours today. So I almost had to cancel the show, but I got it working. So here we go. Let's continue.
closely watched voting block. You've hosted Black men at your residence.
Yep.
You have engaged Black men and centered them in your economic opportunity tour.
Mm-hmm.
But polling shows that some Black men, particularly young Black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young Black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
Okay, now let me say something before she jumps in. The framing of this around young Black men voting for Trump. This is one of these issues that we've been hearing for the last couple months, right? The idea that Black men don't support her, even though Black men vote second highest out of every demographic Democrat, right? We've heard this speech even in the Black community. The idea that Black men just don't support Democrats enough, and they don't support Kamala enough. No matter how many Black men raised almost the same amount of money as Black women, a couple of days after she now announced her presidency, we still have to get on Black men. And then you had Don Lemon and his fake little journalistic interviews on the street, where he found as many Black men as he could find who wanted to vote for Trump but couldn't articulate why. And those were the ones he decided to put on TV to make a point about how politically immature Black men were. He stayed away from Black men who could articulate their position, whether it was for Trump or otherwise, right? he stayed away from them just to make fun of, in many respects, black men. And I think the party, the Democratic Party, has supported that. The Gynocracy definitely has. And the idea is that black men are just not smart enough to support who's really in their interest. Even though these people have not spoken to black men's needs, black men are just not smart enough. So this question is very freighted. It's heavy with a lot of assumptions, a lot of stereotype, a lot of ideas submerged in the question before you even get to hear it. Right? But here we go. So she's finally going to respond on her thoughts about black men.
So I appreciate the spirit of the question, but I'll tell you, I've often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black, but because the policies and the perspectives I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people.
Now, whenever you start to hear this rising tide lifts all boats, this president for everybody on a question specifically tailored to a very key demographic, your eyebrows should at least go up. And I had these concerns when Obama would do it as well, because not everybody's at the same level. Not everybody's going to be impacted, positively by the policies you're generally referencing. All of these things are already suspect coming out the gate. But here we go.
Specifically as it relates to what we need to do, to your point around economic opportunity. Yes, I started way before I was at the top of the ticket, what I called an economic opportunity tour focused on black men. Understanding that, for example, we have so many entrepreneurs in the community who do not have access to capital, but they've got great ideas, an incredible work ethic, the ambition, the aspiration, the dream, but don't have the relationships necessarily. So my work has included, as vice president, getting billions more dollars into community banks, including working with the big banks to do that.
Now, I did a show a while back where I covered a little bit of what she's talking about. Right? Even in the question, the way it was framed, she had a number of black men over to her home. She was talking about startup capital for entrepreneurs, and the inference was that it must be black male entrepreneurs, since those were the black men she invited to have this conversation. And I reported on that. Within a month, she did talk about the kind of funds she extended to communities, billions, as she said. And we covered where those monies went. None of them virtually went to black male entrepreneurs in any significant or noticeable way. So there's a lot of word salad here. There's a lot of tap dancing here that suggests that things benefited black males. And so the mentioning of entrepreneurs is supposed to be some kind of key to black men. But we'll get to that in a second. So here we go.
So that we can increase access to capital for our small businesses, for our startups. Part of my plan under my economic opportunity plan going forward is that right now, startup entrepreneurs, small businesses only get a tax deduction of $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So
most black, now, first of all, in the black community, we know black men have more businesses than any other demographic. But often, because we don't have inheritances, because we don't have capital, many of us have started businesses with less than $5,000. I can tell you, many of the YouTube content creators that I've known, myself included, were only able to build based on what we were given as we were building. Like, if I could turn this camera around right now and show you all the equipment I'm working with, all of it was purchased by my audience as I went along. So even though I'm a tenured professor, I didn't have capital necessarily to start a business. The business paid for itself as I slowly grew. How much different would this be if I had 50,000, 100,000, a couple 100,000 to start whatever business? It doesn't have to just be, online. It could be a number of different businesses. It would have been a very different presentation. But most of us end up starting businesses with what we have in our pockets, right? And we grow as best we can as we go. So this question of, can people start businesses with $5,000 for black men? Most of us start with far less than that, right?
So I'm expanding that to $50,000. understanding, again, that when people have the opportunity to have the resources to get started, they're going to put the good ideas, they're going to put the hard work into it. And part of what I also know is that our young Black men, just like any group of people, anybody, are small.
I'm not moved by this push that she's constantly has been making in this interview, that we're just like everybody else. Part of the reason for the question is that we're not. We have a different history, we have a different experience, and we're in a different situation. And we need to understand, we need to know that you understand the particularity of that. That's really the issue. Sorry about that. We need to know that you understand the particularity of that. So I'm not interested in hearing conversations about how like everybody else Black men are. I get what she's doing, right? Her and Obama have this similar kind of bent, right? This desire to not be pointed to as specifically pointing out their assumed demographic. The irony to that, though, is every other group has no problem doing that. They have no problem advocating for their own interests. And if they get into office, they do so with even less apology. We, on the other hand, or at least those who are identified to be our representatives, don't have those interests, right? So she's playing this, everybody game. We're all the same, but Black men are specifically different. We're in a different situation. We have a different history. And in order to understand our wealth position or lack thereof, you have to be aware of it. Now, I'm not suggesting she's unaware of it. I'm just saying the position she takes does not help us. Here we go.
All businesses are really the backbone of our economy overall. And when they do better economically, we all do better. Part of my work is about understanding what we need to do in dealing with, for example, the historic inequities that have faced the Black community around home ownership, right? I don't have to go through the history with anybody here about.
Now notice the subtle shift. Question was about Black men. She started with entrepreneurship, and she referenced her past actions with Black male entrepreneurships, or at least the assumption of it, because she didn't really suggest she was doing anything for Black male entrepreneurs. She alluded to it. And then when she actually, engaged in this thing where she's talking about extending resources to entrepreneurs, they went to everybody but Black males for the most part. Now she's gently switching to a problem that we can all identify with: real estate, right? But not much mention about Black males and their relationship to real estate, the current rates of ownership, the current roadblocks that Black males may face. She's not talking about that. She gently switched to the Black community. And this is one of the things I wrote about in my book when I talked about flat Blackness and the way it's presented on gendered terms. They will take issues and they will throw it at you, and they will, assume Black male's presence, and it can be used in a variety of different ways. The way she's using it here, she's averting from the question, but she's assuming that you will take it as she's talking about Black males, even though she's talking about the Black community. So these are ways of deflecting from actually having to address Black male needs by focusing on general issues that everybody can relate to.
What that has meant in terms of redlining, what that has meant in terms of biases and home appraisals, and the impact it has had on stemming the opportunity to build intergenerational wealth because of those obstacles. So part of the work that I have done and will continue to do is identify, speak truth about those obstacles, and address them. Another example is medical debt.
Okay. So she went from Black male entrepreneurship to Black home ownership and real estate to medical debt. I'm not saying that, home ownership, real estate, medical debt are not important issues, but when's the last time you actually saw anything come out where there was an in-depth breakdown of Black males and their issues with medical debt? And it's not to say there aren't. It's not my suggestion. What I'm saying is she's using this opportunity to bait and switch the conversation away from Black men by reverting to issues that are important for large populations of people, but don't necessarily speak to articulated Black men's needs, meaning the needs, shout out to KMK for the cash out, the needs that Black men have suggested that they have articulated for themselves. She's not addressing those needs. She's addressing things that most people would nod their heads and say, well, yeah, those are important. And they are. That doesn't mean she's actually addressing what Black men have articulated that they're concerned with, right? She's not addressing that. So this is a slick way, because you don't want to say, no, this is not Black males' needs, and somebody's going to raise their hand and say, well, I have medical debt. That's what that's designed for. So it's not that the issue is unimportant, but it doesn't necessarily speak to what Black men have articulated their concerns are. Right? So these are general little patterns, and I think this is probably not the first time she's been handed the questions beforehand. She doesn't handle off the cuff discussions well, but this deflection here, matter of fact, this entire interview, which I'm not going to go through tonight, is a masterclass on how not to answer questions. So what you're seeing is well practiced, especially as it relates to Black males. Well practiced. She's not addressing Black male needs at this point. She's just throwing issues that nobody really wants to stand up and say is unimportant, because they are important, but they don't necessarily speak to Black males, and she knows it.
1 in 4 Black families or individuals is more likely to carry medical debt than others. So part of my perspective, and as vice president, part of—
So 1 in 4 Black families. Notice how she's not quoting from Black men.
the work that we have done is to say that we're going to eliminate medical debt from being on your credit score. Because until now, medical debt worked against your credit score. And, you know, people know their credit score, like, you know, your weight, right? You know that number. And the difference between what that number is and what it needs to be is the difference between you being able to get a car loan, a small business loan, or even a leasing on an apartment. And so part of my approach is understanding the obstacles that traditionally and currently exist to allow anyone, including Black men, be able to achieve economic.
Anyone, including Black men. You know, for a demographic that has been so wedded to one party, you would think that they could receive a similar level of dedication, at least when it comes to answering questions directly related to them. They could be named for what they are. You would think, right? When she talks about Israel, she is unapologetic in pointing out that she believes they have the right to defend themselves and protect themselves. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't tiptoe around it. She doesn't suggest, you know, anybody that lives in that part of the world. She's very clear. She says Israel. But when talking about Black men, you know, the emphasis is on everybody, and on the back end, it'll benefit Black men. See, this kind of approach is one of the reasons Black men are so dubious, because we understand that those who are behind her in many respects are primarily concerned about their own demographics, whether it's AIPAC, whether it's Black women, you can name it. Each group is there for their own political interests. Now, the difference in the Black community, however, is usually the men and women in a given community aren't split. In the Black community, it's a very different dynamic. And her presidency speaks to the very heart of that frustration, that contention between Black men and women. And Black women are very concerned about pushing their agenda to Kamala and hoping that her presidency will yield them an opportunity to advance without their men. She's willing to support that dynamic, which is one of the reasons she hasn't spoken on Black men until now. And even the way she's going about it is so ham-fisted and general that in many ways it doesn't speak to Black men at all. She's almost done.
Wealth. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think it is sufficient to just only talk about economic policy around reducing unemployment. It is an important marker, and I'm proud of the work that we've done thus far, but it should be a baseline there. Everybody's working. The point is, do people have an opportunity to build wealth?
So she referenced employment within a sentence. She suggested it should already be a lock, but we should really focus on building wealth. Okay, all of those words sound great. You heard any policies yet suggesting that this would be something that would be implemented that would directly help Black men?
If that's what they choose to do, if that's what they want to do. And a lot of my perspective as we go forward is just that. I believe that there are a lot of opportunities that are available to the American people if we just see, people.
Okay, so we've gone from Black men to the Black community to everybody to the American people in one question. We've watched the stages of her response go from Black males to everybody within the course of answering one question. Does this engender any confidence in her ability to recognize Black males' specific needs? She's saying that she understands it. She's referencing very generally historical issues that have blocked Black folk from wealth in general, but she will not speak to Black males' needs in particular. In particular, but she's very different when it comes to women. She'll talk about abortion. She'll talk about rape. She'll talk about the specifics of how things impact women. She'll never reference men or Black men in particular. But even when asked, will find a way to get back to everybody.
And understand what they want for themselves and their families, and then meet them where they are.
Madam Vice President, I want to switch
Now, I
gears.
just want to highlight for you that just in that few minutes, just in what you saw, that was roughly about 5 minutes. That was the only time she directly referenced Black men in any kind of policy related area, and did not give any policy based answers. She gave a wide breadth of suggestions, aspirations, but those aspirations were targeted for everybody. And again, on the back end, Black men should benefit. But we've seen this thing going on for decades. This reminds me of damn near, trickle down Reaganism, right? This will eventually benefit you. It'll get to you at some point. But one of the features of trickle down economics is that it didn't get to the bottom of the people who needed it most. And I don't think that what she's talking about is actually going to benefit Black males. This is one of the reasons that we on this channel have been talking about what Black men want for the last 4 years. We've been very explicit about that. And I bring this up every show on purpose because, we have already done this work. We've already had these conversations, and we ourselves tend to be very limited in our willingness to talk about our own political interests. So we're back to this. I'm going to keep coming back to this because this outlines more than what we've seen in any of these political debates when it comes to the interests of Black males. And this is the opportunity to build it that much more, right? This is the opportunity to build it up, to add more to it based on the needs that you as Black men have. That's how we got to where it is right now. We're at 18 points. We started out with just a few points, and it's continued to grow, right? So again, this is the streamlined list, hyperlinked, of course, so you can see all the other ones we've listed in here. But she talked about entrepreneurship. Now, mind you, number 9 on our list is targeted small business support. So we've addressed entrepreneurship. Then she went to, real estate, and then she went to everybody. But we have actually a specific list broken down on everything from data disaggregation to Title VII reform to voter disenfranchisement to reparations to health as it relates to Black males in particular, to homelessness, education, criminal law reform, family court reform. We've talked about all of these things. Have you heard anything listed in there in her answer or on her platform on her website that suggests that there's been any deep or serious thought brought to Black males' needs? I haven't. I'm still waiting to hear from it. But these are the things we need to be keyed into. We need to be aware of, and we need to be speaking out loud about, because that 5-minute interview did everything but address the question. Now, if you're speaking to black male entrepreneurs, that's great, but you didn't give anything concrete. You said that there would be a tax benefit for entrepreneurs, period. And on the back end, that might help Black men, but it's not necessarily speaking to Black men. Speaking to black male entrepreneurs is great, but Black men have a wide variety of work interests, work involvement, fields of study that go way beyond just one area. You got blue collar men, you got white collar men, you got unemployed men. You mentioned unemployment. You suggested that should be resolved because the Democrats have been supposedly increasing employment, but you didn't speak specifically to what Black men's needs are, whether they are employed or not. What are blue collar men's concerns, and what are you doing to address them? What specific concerns do Black men in STEM have that might need to be addressed, especially when you're talking about FBA ADOS men? Are they really being represented in STEM, or are their numbers being replaced on paper with non-ADOS men? Are there concerns that Black men have in white collar employment in general that aren't being met? Are these concerns even being brought up and talked about? And see, this is one of the reasons why I'm still asking you, those of you who are listening to this show, to contribute to expanding the Black male political agenda. What are the concerns? And we can talk about it just for now in terms of employment. What are the specific concerns that you think Black men should have politically in terms of policy development that would improve the quality of life for men in your realm of employment? Blue collar, white collar, STEM, doesn't matter. Are there specific concerns that Black men have that you can articulate that could be improved by policy? This is all I want to know. And can we do that? Can we articulate what those concerns are and continue to hit people with those concerns? I wanted to get to the point where you can't have a conversation about Black men politically without having to refer specifically to our needs. But right now, there are so many politicians in particular that are comfortable with avoiding us. Because for the most part, Black men have been relatively quiet. We talk about the community. We let women speak on their behalf or what they want. And we're often oblivious to how much what they're talking about can separate from our needs. And we don't say much about it. Now it's time to be vocal and adamant about what our needs are. So this is what I want. This is what I'm asking for from you. This is going to be a short show tonight. I don't want to be here all night. I wanted to just lay this question out to you by showing you a 5-minute clip from the show to point out how little politicians actually think about Black males while they assume our votes. I want to know what you can suggest in the realm of employment or labor that you're involved in. What policy suggestion can you come up with and propose to add to the Black male political agenda that will improve the quality of life for Black men in your area? All I need is an idea, 1 to 3 sentences, and a couple links to information to back up what you're saying. Whatever realm of work you're in, if you're in sales, if you're white collar, blue collar, if you're in STEM, or if you're unemployed and you're having difficulties finding employment, what can you articulate would improve policy-wise Black men in the area you're in? Even if you're in education, even if you're a student, what are some of the areas where you've seen very little support for Black males? Because this is the time. And trust me, this list is static. It's going to, static in the sense that it's available 24 hours a day online. It ain't going nowhere, but it's a living document in terms of it constantly being added to. Shout out to Logic Before Emotion. Appreciate that. Shout out to Expansion Wiring for the Cash App. But it's staying up there and it's not going anywhere. And we're just going to add to it. But I want to add ideas that can be tangibly beneficial to Black men. This was actually part of the question asked of her. Right? What would be tangibly beneficial? What can have direct impact on Black males' lives? And we got a fluff answer. I want us to actually be able to put together a strong list that articulates the problems and the potential solutions all at once. So I'm imploring you to do that. Especially if you're on the replay gang, I want you to put it in the comment section. Shout out to Elwood. Appreciate that support. The Cash App. Shout out to TIQS, support Black male media. Absolutely. Right. But this is what I want you to do. So the reason I'm doing this show tonight is to ask you to contribute more to the list. That's it. Ideas are what I'm asking for. So we can expand what we're talking about. And I want us to get so used to talking about our political interests that it gets difficult to silence. I want to see them running from us because they already kind of are. But I want to hear more Black men able to articulate our needs and highlight the extent to which we've been ignored and people are not listening. We need to be in the face of anybody who even remotely comes toward Black men to be able to articulate our concerns. So please add to that list. Like I said, it's just going to be a short one. Just wanted to get this up because as I watched that interview, I wasn't surprised. It was very reflective of what we've seen before, except in that usually they can ignore us altogether, not bring us up, right? I've not heard her talk about Black men at all. Oh, at least we came up. But by the end of her little answer, we weren't even anywhere in it. So anyway, and nobody gave her any pushback as far as that's concerned. You know what I mean? So it was weak. But for that, I look to you. Send some new ideas and add some things to it. Let me know if you want credit. Let me know if you want to keep your name anonymous. Each one is acceptable. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that matters is the idea. You'll get full credit if that's what you want. But it's all good either way. Okay? So I appreciate y'all coming through tonight. Like I said, it's not going to be a long one, just a quick hour. But I wanted us to actually address this kind of shit because it's going to continue until we shake the trees enough where they have to listen and they have to address what we're talking about. Otherwise, it's going to continue. And I think it's time that changed. Right? Y'all have a good one. I'll holler at y'all soon. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.